Welcome. Before this talk, I want to know how many people use C++ to develop web applications before. Yeah, good. There are very few people do that. No surprise. But situations have changed. I think now is a good idea to do that. And in this presentation, I'd like to talk about why and how. I hope I can change the mind. This is outline. Firstly, I will introduce some basic concepts about web framework. Secondly, I will talk about what is failure. Thirdly, I will talk about the details of the web frameworks. Finally, I will talk about how to develop a web application rapidly. Okay, this is a basic web framework. It contains HTTP server, ORM library, and HTML template engine. The HTTP server helps us to handle the HTTP request. The ORM helps us to access database. The HTML template engine is used to render HTML pages. For example, the client sends a request to the web framework. The framework will route the request to a controller. The controller will get data from the database and then render the HTML page with the data from the database. At last, it will send response the rendered HTML page to the client. Yeah, it's very simple, and it's also a MVC model. Okay, I want to show you some other language web framework here. This is a web framework from PHP. It's very simple. Root. This is the root and the path and the visit function. The syntax is very clear. This is another web framework from Python. The code is also very simple. And this is another framework from Java. Yeah, it's famous. It is more complicated than before web frameworks because there are so many configurations. Do you think it's a good idea? I don't like this kind of web framework. Let's look at some C++ web framework now. I searched on GitHub. These are the popular web frameworks. Now, let's look at CppCMS. Here, this is the Hello World example from CppCMS. I think it is not very easy to use because you have to inherit it from a base class. You have to know how many virtual functions need to be overridden. And furthermore, you need a special compiler to compile the HTML templates, and it makes the framework more complicated. Okay, let's look at the other two web frameworks. TreeFrog. It is based on Qt. You know, Qt is a giant framework, so I think it's too heavy. Crow is just a HTTP server. It's not a real web framework. How about Sinkin? I think Sinkin is good enough because the Hello World example is also very simple. Like other language web framework, the syntax is also very clear. and it also supports Access database. However, it lacks HTML templates engine, and compared with some other language web framework, it is a little bit complicated. So I want a better web framework. I think a good web framework should contain perfect infrastructures such as HTTP server, ORM, HTML template engine, AOP, and so on. And of course, it should be very easy to use. And the user don't need to learn many details of the framework. He just needs to focus on the business. And it's also high performance. So I try to do a better web framework, a better C++ web framework. You can use Feather to develop a web application rapidly. What is Feather? Okay, let's show you an example here. You can finish a Hello World example in 5 lines code. It's very simple. You just need to focus on the business. You don't know many details of the framework. This is the framework of Feather. It contains a HTTP server, AOP library, HTML template engine, and also supports AOP. Later I will explain what is AOP, why we need it. And it's also a classic MVC framework. Okay. And this website, purecpp.org, is made of Feather. Let's look at the website. Here is okay. It is a blog website, and all the website was made of pure C++. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. There we go. Okay. This is a website was made of pure C++, and it is a classic blog website. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. So you should be able to start. Oh. Yeah. And the code is on my GitHub. How many business functions of the website? There are more than 15 business functions, and all the core business code is about 500 lines. It means you can develop a website rapidly. How about the performance? I compared Feather with some other language web framework, and Feather is the best one. So, why we need C++ web framework? There are two main reasons. It's because of high development efficiency and high performance. Next, I will talk about the details of the web framework. There are three core components of the web framework. Cinatra help us to deal with HTTP requests. ORMpp help us to access database. Render help us to render HTML pages. Now, let's look at what is Sinatra. Sinatra is a powerful HTTP server. It is based on ASIO. Maybe someone will argue that why not use Beast, right? Yeah, I will do a comparison with Beast. Sinatra, indeed, Sinatra is an application library. It provides high-level user interface and do much work for users. Users just need to focus on business and just need to write very few code. Beast is a fundamental library. It provides low-level interface, and you have to write lots of code to finish a business function. I will give you an example here. For example, if we want to implement HTTP upload function, if you use Beast, you have to write more than 100 lines code. But if you use Sinatra, you just need 6 lines code here, and you will finish the upload function. And the download function is also very simple. You just need to provide the URL of the resource. Okay, let's look at how the HTTP server deal with the HTTP request. If the client sends a request, the server will parse the HTTP protocol to get some information, such as the HTTP method, the URL, and the headers, and so on. After that, the server will route the request to a controller function. The controller function will do real business. At last, return back to the client. Okay, now let's look at the HTTP parser. Yeah, it's used to parse the HTTP protocol, and the string view is very suitable for parsing the protocol. The router is also very simple. You just need to register a path and a function. Here, the request will route to the business function. Okay, now let's look at this piece of code. This code is from a Beast example. This code are the validation code, and this code is the core business. We usually write this kind of code, right? But there is a problem. If there are so many input parameters, we have to write so many validation code, and the code will become very, very long. And we just need to focus on what we want and avoid the long code. So we need a solution to make our core business code simple and clean. And we need AOP. AOP is an aspect-oriented programming pattern. What is AOP? Look at the picture. These are the core business, and these are the non-core business. What is non-core business? For example, the logging and some foundation. They are non-core business. And different core business have the same non-core business code. So we can extract the long core business code into aspects. Let's look at an example of AOP. Here, these functions are the core business, and the check and the log are the long core business. They are aspects. Let's look at the aspects. Okay, the log is just write something in its output, and the check is just used to check the parameters. How to implement AOP? It is very easy to implement in C++ 17. Okay. Let's look at the process of AOP. Here, with the request card, the request will be passed into the before aspect, then execute the core business. After that, the request will be passed into the after aspect. So we can use this way to separate long core business from core business, and we can also add new aspect, so it makes the framework more flexible. And this is the implement of AOP. The idea is very easy. For each order aspects, and execute the before function, and execute after function in aspects. Here we need detect if the after or before function has exist. So we need to check. And the code is also very simple. We just need use the if context verb. Okay. The detect main function is also simple. Okay. Let's make a convolution of cinatra. String view help us to parse HTTP protocol, and the router and AOP make the user focus on business. The framework do much work and then provide simple interface for the user. Let's look at the second component of Feather, ORMpp. It is a powerful ORM library, and it is based on compile time reflection. You can use ORMpp to operate different kinds of databases. Let's look at an example of ORMpp. Here, it's very easy to operate database. ORMpp makes database programming simple and hide the differences between different kinds of database. So you can easily to change the database. How to do that? You just need change the database type, and everything will be okay. Why ORMpp can do that? Because ORMpp provide unified interface, so we can reuse the code. Okay, that is what the ORMpp have done. Unify the interface and generates SQL automatically, and mapping table data to objects. Okay, let's talk about how the ORMpp unify the different kinds of API from different databases. For example, these are the collect API from different databases. ORMpp just provide unified API. Yeah. Here I use variadic templates to unify the API. Let's look into the collect code of let's look into the code of collect Here, we need to handle different kinds of database interface. So here I use if const expert to do static polymorphism. Now let's talk about how to generate the SQL string automatically. For example, when we call the create data table API, the function will generate such SQL string. How to do that? Because it is based on compile time reflection, so we can get all the metadata from reflection. Here we can get the table name, field name, and type name. But there is a problem. The C++ types are different from the database field type, so we need a mapping. We need a mapping C++ type to data table field type. And this is the type mapping. It's also very simple. Okay. And this we can get the map type name. After that, we can generate the SQL string very easily. It's very cool. You can use an object to everything what you want. That is the power of reflection. Now, let's talk about how to mapping table data to objects. For example, we can query the data table. The idea is similar. Utilize reflection for each the struct fields and assign the table data to the field. This is the assign code. We need to check what is the real type of the table data. Here I use if const expert to simplify the code. Otherwise, you have to write so many enable functions. Okay, let's make a conclusion. ORMpp use unified interface with variety templates and const expert if, and it generates SQL and mapping entity with compile time reflection. Okay, let's look at the last component of Feather. Render is a powerful HTML template engine. It helps us to control the UI, HTML UI display, and help us to reuse the HTML code. Okay, let's look at what is render. Render contains two parts. The first part is a customer script. It contains if-else, for loop, and variable syntax. Another part is a parser of the customer script. I like to show you an example to show you an example of render. For example, the $quoted string is an HTML template, and the template will be replaced by a dynamic JSON data. And this example shows how to control the UI display. For example, if the user has logged in, the HTML page will show the username. If not, the home page will show the login and join items. The render can help us control the UI display. And this HTML contains some sub-HTML pages. What is the navigator HTML and what is the footer HTML? For example, this is the navigator and this is the footer. In a website, all the navigator and footer are the same, so we can reuse the HTML code, right? And this is the core code of render parse HTML page. We need parse the syntax of for loop, if else, include, or inline, and so on. Now, this is the last part. Yeah, I think that is what you want. Yeah, I want to talk about how to develop a web application rapidly. Here, for example, if we want to implement a login business function, how to do that? The first step, we need to write the HTML code. The HTML code includes the username, the password, the submit button. After that, we need to write the controller function. It is business function. This controller function is just render the login page to the client. Okay, and after render the login page, we can see this login page, and now we need submit, right? We need login. This is the login controller function. Here, I use AOP. I separate non-core business in check login input. The input, this aspect will validate the input parameters. If the parameter is not right, it will respond error page. If it's okay, the request will be passed into the login core business function. The business function is also very simple. You just need to check if the username and password has existed in the database. If it exists, redirect to the home page. And now you have finished all the login business function. Okay, let's make a conclusion. How to develop rapidly. Just focus on the business function. Separate non-core business from core business. Utilize the framework to deal with trivial details. Use Sinatra to deal with details of HTTP. Use ormpp to deal with the details of database. Use render to deal with details of HTML. Okay. Is there a question?
Hi. This is really cool. I'm very impressed. I do have one question. Has any effort been made to load balance a website created with Feather? If we bombard or do a DDoS attack on a website created in Feather, is there any indications that it's being overused, or is there any fallbacks that can be put in place?
So the question is there are some protection of this DDoS attack or something like that?
Not necessarily for security reasons, just to know whether or not you should spin up another instance of the website, for instance.
Indeed, I use Feather to develop a website. I showed it before, and you can you can separate the secure code into the aspects. Yeah.
So like that sort of monitoring that would detect that there was there would probably be a good way of balancing would be added as an aspect of an instance, or instance of an aspect, extended as an aspect.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.